On September 19, 1960, a mysterious man landed at an airport in the heart of Africa. He carried no luggage, no identification, just a small kit containing something invisible, something deadly. This man was the CIA's top scientist, and inside his kit, an exotic poison designed to produce a fatal disease indigenous to Central Africa. His target? A 35-year-old man whose only crime was believing that Africa belonged to Africans. His name was Patrice Lumumba, and within 5 months he would be dead. His body dissolved in acid, his bones crushed and scattered, with only a single tooth remaining as evidence he ever existed. But here's what they didn't count on. You can kill a man, but you cannot kill an idea. And the idea that Lumumba represented terrified the most powerful nations on earth. This is the story of the assassination that changed Africa forever. The Belgian Congo, 1925. A baby is born in Kasai province who will grow up to shake the foundations of colonialism itself. Patrice Lumumba enters a world where his people are not considered fully human, where African hands are cut off for failing to meet rubber quotas, where King Leopold II of Belgium treats an entire country as his personal property and murders an estimated 10 million people in the process. Young Patrice is different from the start. At age 11, he enters missionary school, institutions designed not to educate Africans but to prepare them for manual labor. 1 hour per day for studying. The rest, farming and physical work. But Patrice hungers for knowledge. His teachers, recognizing something special in this precocious boy, lend him books. He reads them before nightfall because his family is too poor to afford a candle. Think about that for a moment. A boy so brilliant, so determined that he must race against the setting sun just to learn. By age 18, he's working odd jobs, nursing assistant, postal clerk. But everywhere he goes, Lumumba absorbs everything. Languages, Swahili, Lingala, French, ideas, politics, the stories of atrocities committed against his people. In the capital, Leopoldville, he sees the stark contrast. White boulevards, swimming pools, skyscrapers, luxurious hotels. But the restaurants, the theaters, the front seats of buses, off limits to Africans. This is apartheid without the name. In the early 1950s, Lumumba begins writing editorials, poems, passionate arguments for his people. He becomes one of only a dozen Congolese in a country of 13 million who dares to express himself publicly. And the colonial authorities notice. In 1956, everything changes. Lumumba is invited to Belgium on a government study tour, a prestigious honor. But when he returns, he's immediately arrested on charges of embezzlement from his time at the post office. Most historians agree the charges were fabricated. The authorities wanted him silenced, imprisoned for 2 years. But here's what they didn't understand. Prison doesn't break revolutionaries, it creates them. Behind bars, Lumumba makes a radical shift. He abandons any faith in Western values and embraces pan-Africanism, the idea that all African ethnic groups should unite against colonial oppression. When he emerges from prison in 1957, Patrice Lumumba is no longer just a writer, he is a weapon. March 1957. Across the ocean, Ghana becomes the first sub-Saharan African nation to gain independence from colonial rule. The news electrifies the entire continent. If Ghana can be free, why not the Congo? Lumumba joins with other young intellectuals to create something unprecedented, the Congolese National Movement, the MNC. Unlike every other political party in the Congo, which organized around tribe or region, the MNC has one simple, radical message. We are all Congolese. December 1958. Lumumba travels to Accra, Ghana, for the All-African Peoples Conference. Standing before a gathering of Africa's greatest minds, revolutionaries, dreamers, leaders. He delivers a speech that will define his life. The winds of freedom currently blowing across all of Africa have not left the Congolese people indifferent. Political awareness is now becoming manifest. We are assured of the support of the masses. He returns to the Congo burning with purpose. He will build a mass movement. He will free his people. But freedom has a price. January 1959. Riots explode in Leopoldville. The Belgian authorities respond with brutal force. Unemployment, overcrowding, discrimination, decades of pressure finally rupture. In October, when Lumumba holds a rally in Stanleyville, Belgian forces open fire. 30 people die. Lumumba is arrested again, this time for inciting riots. But now everything is different. The Congo is on fire. Violence spreads. The Congolese refuse to pay taxes, refuse to obey administrative regulations. When King Baldwin of Belgium visits in December 1959, he's greeted not with ceremony, but with tear gas dispersing angry mobs. The Belgians finally understand they're losing control fast. In January 1960, they convene a conference in Brussels, all Congolese political parties invited to discuss independence. But there's a problem. Lumumba's party refuses to attend without their leader. The Belgians realize they have no choice. On January 26, 1960, Patrice Lumumba is released from prison and flown to Brussels. At the conference, only Lumumba insists on one unified Congo. His rivals want a loose federation of provinces, easier to control, easier to exploit. Elections are scheduled for May 1960. Independence will come just 1 month later, in June. The election results shock everyone. In a fragmented field of over a dozen parties, Lumumba's MNC wins 33 seats out of 137, far more than anyone else. After weeks of negotiation, a unity government forms. Joseph Mobutu as president, Patrice Lumumba as prime minister. At age 35, the boy who read by candlelight has become the first democratically elected prime minister of an independent Congo. But his triumph will last exactly 67 days. June 30th, 1960, Independence Day. The ceremony is arranged with precise Belgian protocol. King Baldwin will speak. President Kasavubu will offer a brief, uninspiring response. Prime Minister Lumumba? He's not even scheduled to speak. King Baldwin rises, his tone dripping with condescension. This independence is the crowning of the work conceived by the genius of King Leopold II. Don't replace the structures that Belgium has handed over until you're sure you can do better. Lumumba sits listening, his jaw clenching. His hand moves furiously across paper, scribbling notes. This is the moment when diplomacy must end and truth must speak. Without warning, without permission, Patrice Lumumba rises, and he delivers the speech that will seal his fate. We have known the ironies, the insults, the blows that we had to submit to morning, noon, and night because we are Negroes. We have known that our lands were despoiled in the name of legal texts which recognized only the right of the strongest. We have not forgotten that the law was never the same for the white and the black. We have known the atrocious sufferings of those condemned for political opinions. We have known that in the cities there were magnificent houses for the whites and crumbling hovels for the blacks. No Congolese will ever forget that independence was won in struggle, filled with tears, fire, and blood. Our wounds are too fresh and too painful to be forgotten. The Congolese delegation erupts in applause, standing ovation. Finally, someone has spoken their truth. But the Belgians, stunned, outraged, insulted. King Baldwin's face turns to stone. The official lunch is delayed for 2 hours while Belgian ministers debate whether to fly home immediately. In Washington, in London, in Brussels, alarm bells begin ringing. An African has never dared speak like this, never dared to tell the truth so publicly, so fearlessly. Within days, CIA reports begin circulating. Lumumba is described as radical, irrational, dangerous. One official writes, he's like an African Fidel Castro. The deliberation is crucial. Just 1 year earlier, Fidel Castro seized power in Cuba. The Cold War is at its peak. The United States cannot afford another Cuba, especially not in the heart of Africa, sitting on the world's largest deposits of uranium, copper, diamonds, and cobalt. What the West fears is simple. If Lumumba succeeds, if he proves that Africans can govern themselves, control their own resources, determine their own destiny, colonialism dies everywhere. And they have too much to lose. Lumumba's honeymoon as Prime Minister lasts exactly 5 days. July 5th, the Congolese army mutinies. Soldiers are furious. They're still commanded entirely by Belgian officers, while civilian politicians drive expensive cars and live in luxury. Lumumba acts swiftly. He fires the Belgian officers and promotes Congolese soldiers. Among them, a 29-year-old sergeant named Joseph Mobutu, who becomes chief of staff. But the crisis deepens. Thousands of Europeans flee. Belgian newspapers scream about atrocities against whites. And Belgium, using this as justification, unilaterally sends troops back into the Congo. Then comes the ultimate betrayal. July 11th, Moise Tshombe, backed by Belgian mining companies, declares the mineral-rich province of Katanga independent. Belgian troops pour in to protect the secession. Think about what this means. The Congo has been independent 11 days, and the former colonial power is already tearing it apart. Desperate, Lumumba turns to the United Nations. Help us maintain our territorial integrity, he pleads. Remove the Belgian troops. The UN sends peacekeepers, but refuses to help end Katanga's secession. They call it an internal matter. Then Lumumba appeals to the United States. President Eisenhower declines. So Lumumba makes the decision that will cost him his life. He asks the Soviet Union for help. Soviet planes arrive, Soviet technicians, Soviet weapons. In Washington, panic sets in. At a National Security Council meeting, President Eisenhower receives a briefing from his advisors. If Lumumba stays in power, the Congo will fall to communism. The uranium, the cobalt, the diamonds, all could fall into Soviet hands. According to declassified documents, this is when President Eisenhower gives the order: eliminate Lumumba. The CIA begins working on assassination schemes. They recruit that scientist with his poison kit. They plan to slip it into Lumumba's food, his toothpaste. But the poison expires before they can use it. Meanwhile, the Belgians are working on their own plans, and they have someone on the inside, Colonel Joseph Mobutu. September 14th, 1960. With active CIA encouragement and money, Colonel Mobutu stages a coup. He announces he's neutralizing all politicians and expels all Soviet personnel. Lumumba is placed under house arrest, surrounded by UN peacekeepers to protect him from assassination, but also by Mobutu's soldiers to prevent his escape. For weeks, Lumumba remains trapped in his mansion overlooking the Congo River. The CIA continues plotting. The Belgians continue plotting. The UN, under pressure from the United States, votes to recognize Mobutu's government as legitimate. Lumumba knows his time is running out. November 27th, during a tropical downpour, hidden in the back of a car, Lumumba escapes. His plan: reach Stanleyville, his stronghold, and rally the people. But his own charisma betrays him. He stops to give speeches, to connect with the people who love him. It gives his pursuers time to catch up. December 1st, at a bridge near Port Frankie, Mobutu's soldiers capture him. The footage is haunting. Lumumba, face swollen from beatings, glasses askew, thrown into a military vehicle, his dignity somehow intact even as they torture him. For 6 weeks, he's held in a military camp. The UN Secretary General, Dag Hammarskjöld, visits the Congo. Ghana's president, Kwame Nkrumah, begs him to authorize a rescue mission. Hammarskjöld, under American pressure, refuses. From Washington comes the cold instruction: let the Congolese take care of the Congolese. January 17, 1961, 3 days before John F. Kennedy's inauguration as President of the United States. Mobutu and Kasavubu have a problem. Lumumba, even in captivity, is dangerous. Soldiers are sympathetic to him. His supporters are organizing. There are fears Kennedy might try to release him. They devise a simple plan. Hand Lumumba over to his enemies in Katanga, the people whose secession he tried to stop, whose leader Moise Tshombe he opposed. Lumumba and two companions, Joseph Okito and Maurice Impolo, are thrown onto a plane. On board, specially selected guards from the Luba tribe, whose people Lumumba's forces had massacred months earlier in Kasai, beat them savagely. When the plane lands in Elizabethville, now Lubumbashi, Katangan ministers and Belgian officers are waiting. They continue the torture. Then they drive the three men to a remote area. What happens next is described in declassified documents and witness testimonies. Lumumba is forced to dig his own grave. Then he's executed by firing squad. His body is buried in a shallow grave. But even in death, they fear him. The next day, Belgian officers return. They exhume the bodies. Using hacksaws, they dismember them. They dissolve what they can in sulfuric acid. They burn the rest. They crush the bones and scatter them. One Belgian officer keeps two of Lumumba's teeth, later having them covered in gold as souvenirs. January 20th, John F. Kennedy is inaugurated as president. He won't learn of Lumumba's death until February 13th. Patrice Emery Lumumba was 35 years old. He had been prime minister for exactly 67 days. When the world learns of Lumumba's death, it erupts. Riots break out at Belgian embassies worldwide. The United Nations Security Council witnesses violence in its spectator gallery. Everyone knows he was murdered. But whom? How many different hands held the knife? In 2002, 41 years later, Belgium formally apologizes for its role in the assassination. In 2013, the United States admits that President Eisenhower authorized Lumumba's murder. But no one has ever been charged. No one has faced justice. The man they put in Lumumba's place? Joseph Mobutu. He rules the Congo, which he renames Zaire, for 32 years as a brutal dictator, with full American support, with CIA money, with Western weapons. He steals billions while his people starve. The Congo becomes synonymous with corruption, violence, endless war. But here's what they couldn't kill. In 1964, Malcolm X declared Lumumba the greatest black man who ever walked the African continent. Today, his face appears on murals across Africa. His speeches are studied by activists worldwide. In 2022, Belgium finally returned the only physical remains, a single tooth, to the Democratic Republic of Congo for a state funeral. In his final letter, smuggled from prison, Lumumba wrote these words: "Dead, living, free, or in prison, it is not I who counts, it is the Congo. It is our people. History will one day have its say, but it will not be the history that Brussels, Paris, Washington, or the United Nations will teach. It will be the history that they will teach in the countries freed from colonialism, a history of glory and dignity." Patrice Emery Lumumba believed that Africa belongs to Africans, that the vast wealth beneath Congolese soil should benefit Congolese people, that independence meant more than just changing the flag. For that belief, the most powerful nations on earth conspired to kill him. But 63 years later, his words still echo. His vision still inspires. His truth still resonates. They killed the man, but the idea lives forever. If this story moved you, if it angered you, if it made you realize how much of Africa's true history remains untold, I need you to do something. Share this video right now. Send it to someone who needs to hear Lumumba's story. Hit that subscribe button, because every week we uncover the histories they don't want you to know, the heroes they tried to erase, the truths they tried to bury. And drop a comment below. How would Africa be different today if Lumumba had lived? Let's keep his memory alive. Let's make sure they can never silence him again.